So there's not a whole lot to say there. I mean, just before we get to a little bit of action, um, we've been building up. We've been having this discussion. We finally get to like the first inciting incident, like this fight that could have happened. This little skirmish that could have happened right there in the house, where they could have taken Borlas captive. Most likely, they could have killed him. Maybe it gets cut off. Maybe Tolkien felt daunted. I mean, there's especially when we see the notes that talk about his wife passing away, his daughter being far off, his son being unavailable. We do get the sense of isolation that Tolkien must have been feeling himself at that age. The big giveaway being the death of the wife. That was a big deal for him, and he probably didn't see what he could add, how he could help. How soon after having defeated evil, let's say, for the Great Generation, was it already resurging at the roots, If by the 60s or the late 60s he was seeing it already afoot and happening, that's got to be daunting, Having survived 2 world wars, as terrible as that must have been to survive and undergo, to see your own friends split apart by that kind of warfare that we have available after the 20th century. It surely was very daunting. And one can only imagine that at that point in time you just want to give up. And maybe also there was a lack of imagination on the part of, at that age, how do we fight this? When you have a Sauron, it's easy to rally up different peoples and confidences and old allies, and you still had the elves that lived for thousands of years and had been involved in that struggle. Now all of those people are gone. Gandalf is gone. Frodo is gone. Elrond is gone. Galadriel is gone. Aragorn is dead. Arwen probably died soon after. His children have turned out to be not that impressive. And it's not really a blame on that. It's just maybe this is part of the cycles of life, where a generation grows up in turmoil and has to fight and learn what it means to stand up for something, and then the next generation is born into peace and they are satiated and they don't they're easily to manipulate and employ, and to feel disgruntled and feel left behind or entitled. And so I don't think he really had the energy at that point. It was probably too depressing to be that old and see it coming, But perhaps that's where his spirituality ends, because there's a whole lot more that can be drawn from, I feel, in understanding the bigger contest in all this, right? Because nothing has changed. If the canker, the blight, the canker, that he uses the word canker, right? Which, let's look at a definition of it if we want to really understand why that particular definition was used, right? It's a destructive fungal disease of apple and other trees. So it's a very specific type of thing. Remember, he uses trees in nature a lot. That results in damage to the bark, right? So it damages the bark, the actual bark of the tree. An ulcerous condition or disease of a human or an animal, right? It's a disease, right? A canker is a disease. It's something that is eating away at the body and the soul and needs to be removed. That's always present in the conception of Tolkien. Morgoth was the origination, the origin of that, and instilled it into the world, because the Valar for the most part remained in Valinor, And once the world was created, they weren't all over the world. So Morgoth had the run of the place for the most part, as far as the story concerns. But it's the concept is that the earth itself is inherently has this canker that it which means you have to, in every generation, you have to be wary of it. You have to fight it off. You can't give in to it because of sentimentality. You can't just give up on defending against it. You can't just let logic and reasoning of the type that Ceylon provides to let you back off, because it will come home to roost. It will come into your home, right? Borlas has a home with a fence, as he said. My fence is not enough. I have to worry about the wall and the fence of the realm. If the realm itself is not defended, my fence means nothing. And we end with him in his own house, about to be attacked, right? So he's in his own house. It came for him in his own house. No shame, no fear, nothing. This is what's going to happen. It's going to come for you in your own house. If you don't start by defending the realm, he makes it very clear. If you don't defend the border and your walls of the kingdom, the realm that you're in, the peoples that you belong to, then then that evil will cross your border, and it will come and arrest you in your own house at some point or other, one way or another. It's daunting, right? Because when you get to the point that Borlas is in, and you're alone in your own house, you could die. That could be the end for Borlas. That could be the end for us. Or it could be the beginning of a long struggle. Either way, you're not going home and going to sleep, right? But yeah, I mean, now that I've reread it, that's essentially the same theme that I'm worrying about in the novels that I'm working on, the Dark Ember novels, because that is what we're facing, and it's gotten to a level of disparagement at seeing how overwhelmed we are, right? At this point in the state, when he was writing this, Ceylon was as part of a small cult, and he even says that they weren't strong enough yet to fight against all of the peoples of Gondor. Imagine what phrasing, right? They want to contest all of the peoples of Gondor, not just have their voice heard. When you get to the level that now we're so far along the road from when the story was written, where Ceylon and his ilk have reached immense power, right? With their argument and their counter argument, and they're never answering a question or answering a question with another question. They've gone so far because they weren't stopped and arrested and exiled, if anything, that now they are gonna come and they're going to kill and arrest you. Arrest you at the best, kill you at the worst. And so the question is, how do you fight it at that point, right? How do you fight it? And that's where the Dark Ember comes into place, and what I want to talk about. And because I'm more in my life, I'm not at the stage that Borlas is in. I'm more at the stage of Dante Alighieri, right? Where he's like when he starts the Inferno, he's halfway through his life. I mean, I'm not 30, but back then that was halfway. Let's say our 40s are hopefully halfway through our lives nowadays, and that's definitely where I'm at. I'm at that point in my life where I may not have the energy of a 20-year-old to be able to fight back, but I have at least enough experience and mental acuity to offer what I can offer some form of guidance, or offer some form of solidarity, offer some ways that the youth can re-envision themselves as they fight this fight that they're going to have to fight. We've left them in a very bad place. We've done we've been satiated with good, and we've allowed ourselves to eat off the fat of the land that the great generation provided us through their struggle, and we haven't defended it, and we haven't protected it. The boomers probably having done the most damage, but Gen X and millennials have not done any better, and now Gen Z and on are the ones that are going to have to fight this. They have no choice. We've left them with no choice. So that's what the Dark Ember is about. It's about envisioning how that struggle that Tolkien couldn't even finish is going to, I mean, obviously I'm not setting anything in Middle Earth, I'm setting it in our real world, but I'm bringing in a lot of these elements that were the inspiration for Middle Earth, you know, the Merlin stories, and I mean the Arthurian stories and tales, and develop my own mythology on it, and probably that'll be one of the next things that we'll delve into and see if people find it interesting. But I really felt this was an important thing to address. I didn't even think of it until I read it again, how it really relates to my stuff, but it really does. It's the beginning of what he couldn't finish, and I feel it needs to be finished, but not associated with Middle Earth, because at this point, Middle Earth and the Tolkien estate is a canker. It's a freaking canker, you know? Don't want to touch it, don't want to have anything to do with it. That's why I stopped reading it. I stopped studying it. I stopped caring about Elvish language and all the stuff that a lot of fans do, because I don't want it impregnated in anything that I'm writing. And I've done that for a long time. But this was the beginning of my journey of wanting to even be a writer. So it deserves its credit where it's due and its respect where it's due. And we'll leave it at that.